Welcome back everyone to another Unreal Engine 4 video, and in today's episode I will have some more tips and tricks for you guys. So let's begin. The first thing that I want to show you is that if we have, let's say we have this object right here, we have its details available to us, all the collisions, physics and all that good stuff in the details panel, and let's say we have another object and we basically want to compare between these two. So it's gonna take a minute to maybe click back and forward all the time to compare these two. What you can do is basically have like two detail panels. So if you would go to the window and select details and enable the details 2 panel, you can actually have up to 4. It will bring you another window. Now by default, whenever you switch, you will see that both of those are getting switched. But if you select one of them and then lock it with this symbol right here, you have another one over here as well for both of the details panels, so you can lock this one, select another object, and now you will see that you have two different objects. Obviously you can do this for as many objects as you like, so if you would enable the third window, for example, like this, and then again it's gonna swap these two which are not locked, but let's say we want to lock this on the cylinder. Now you can see we have 3 different details panels available to us. Now exactly the same logic applies for the content browser right here. You can have as well up to 4. So if you go to the window and look for there it is, content browser, we can enable another one. We can place it wherever we want it to be. So let's enable another one, the third one. This is really good when, let's say, if we have to go between the folders constantly, it's gonna be quite a messy task if you are working in multiple folders at the same time. So for the content browser one, let's say you can open this window, and then for like the mannequin animations you open another one, and then for the actual blueprints you have the third one. So this is going to work really cool to switch between these. But for example, if we are in the main window and then we select the character, right click, and then browse to the asset, it's gonna close this folder that we have open right here. So basically it's going to change the active content browsers folder that we are in. Example, if we are in the content browser 1 and then we browse to asset, you can see that now we are in 2 of those windows changing to the asset. So what you can do again is use the lock mechanics. So lock it right this, like so, select your asset, browse to it, and then it's gonna look for the next free content browser that it can use in order to open this asset. So if you are working in the materials or whatever, lock it so it doesn't get changed, and it's gonna change a different content browser for you. Now the next step would be that, let's say you are doing some architectural work and you prefer maybe the side, front, whatever the views, and obviously you can change these over here. You have some shortcuts for the Alt H and whatever, but I don't think they are that helpful because it's quite a weird shortcut to use. What you can use instead is holding your enable the screen keys. So what you can do is hold your left control, which for some reason doesn't show up in this software, but you hold left control, then you click mouse wheel and drag it to one of the sides. So if I drag it to the left, it creates me a back view, the other one is the front view, up is the top, down. Now if you would want to have like side views, then top right is going to create you the left one, so for some reason, and the other way it's going to create you the right view. And if you ever want to go back, you just go bottom sideways to whatever side, and it brings you back to the perspective view. So you have quite a few options like this, which will probably, if you're an architect or whatever, this is going to be more familiar to you, and this is going to save you quite a bit of time. Now the next step is, while you are in this view, well, basically any of these views right here, if you click your mouse wheel and drag, it's going to tell you the distance. So for example, let's say the text field that we have over here is roughly 770 units or something like that. Yeah, 770, 780 maybe units wide. So you can do all kinds of calculations like this, and it is probably quite useful. I don't know, I never use this, but I assume this might be quite useful. Now the next step, while we are still in the viewport, is that if you hold L key on your keyboard, L, and click, it creates you a point light, which could actually save you quite a bit of time. Instead of just dragging in the light constantly, you can just click and add a bunch of lights. Now the next thing is, let's drag in an object and let's say we want to place it somewhere, but it's somewhere outside of our vision kind of. So now if we would move it over here, then we need to go to the side and move it again and again, and it's quite a pain. What you can do instead is hold your shift key down, and now whenever you move an object, your camera basically is following the object. So now while you hold the shift key, it's going to allow you to move these objects and follow with the actual object. Now the next tip is, so we have these scaling values that basically snapping values rather, that snap your objects. So by default it is 10 units, but you can actually set up your own custom values. Here you have some presets, but you can set up your own. So if you would go to the edit and editor preferences, you can look for, what was it, grid size, grid snap size 16. Oh, there we go. So we have the decimal grid sizes, so the ones that I mentioned. You also have the rotation somewhere. So here are the common rotation grid sizes. You also have the scaling ones. So basically you can set up your own custom values for that so that it is easier for you to select those. Now one more thing that I actually did in the previous video, which I for some reason didn't mention. Now you can duplicate objects very easily. We have this guy right here, and if we hold our Alt key down and drag from the object, it's going to create a duplicate. Now as long as I keep on holding the key, it's no longer going to duplicate. I just clicked it and I'm still holding it, but if I release and push it once more, now the next time I drag from it, it's going to create a duplicate. Now click Alt, drag, and it's going to create a new instance. Now the same principle applies if you rotate and hold Alt and rotate, it's going to create you another copy as well. Now the next step is, let's say we have this model right here and we want to just directly open it and we don't really want to do anything much with it, don't want to look for it in the content browser. Just simply select the object and click Control E. Whenever you do Control E, it's going to bring you this specific asset. One more cool shortcut with the control is the Control P, which allows you to search for an asset. So let's say we want to use the third person blueprint, and that is this one right here. And if we are in the Control P, whenever we click this, it's going to open it up for us. Now, while we are still talking about opening some assets, as you noticed, all of them are opening right here through a new window. What you also can do is actually decide where new windows are getting created on. So if you would go to the editor preferences, and I believe it should be right here. Yeah, there it is. So asset editor open location. So the very first screen, one of the very first, actually the first drop down menu, you can select where the new windows will open up on. So you could add these to the content browser, to the new window like they are by default. Actually no, by default I think they are last docked window or new window. That should be the default, I think, parameter. You can also just click main window, which is what I prefer. So now whenever we are opening any asset, you will see that it instantly gets opened up right here. Now before I actually destroy my editor, which I plan on doing, it's gonna look very ridiculous by the end of this video, real quick, let's go to our blueprints and I'm gonna show you some more quick tips and tricks which I didn't show in the previous video. For example, we have all kinds of pins, and if we would hold control, so left control, and drag a pin from a connection, we can actually reconnect it really easily, like so. And if we would hold Alt key and click the pin, it's going to simply destroy it. So this is a really quick and cool way. You can also move multiple pins. I don't think there are any that would have multiple entries in this, but for example, oh, here we have one. So we can just simply drag and reconnect multiple pins at the same time, as long as they are in the same connection. Now the next step would be that we can actually look for the same function throughout basically all the blueprints. It's going to take a minute, especially if your project is a bit bigger. It's going to take quite a while. But for example, if I'm just going to create a new blueprint, and if inside of this, basically inside of any blueprint, if you would use the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-F, there we go, finally that one at least got displayed. It's going to bring you up the Find in Blueprints window. So now you can look for, let's say, like Begin Play Event. Click Enter, and it's going to display you the Begin Play events in all of your blueprints that you will have inside of your project. Obviously, begin play is not the best example, but let's say you have some different function which maybe you forgot where exactly it gets launched. Here you can find all the locations where it gets launched. Now the next step is let's call this live debugging perhaps. So we have a keyboard one event. So whenever we click one, we basically set up some kind of a number. So we have, let's say, an integer, and then on clicked we get the value and we do plus plus increment. So basically it adds +1 to this variable. Now if we would now try to play this, you will see that whenever I click 1, it's going to show me the line. Wait, before that you need to enable the debug filter to be the third-person character, this one right here. Now whenever you click 1, you will see that the execution route gets basically colored, so you can see that it moves. So that means that something is actually happening. Now one more thing that we can do is actually we can follow the actual value that's inside of the variable. So for example, this variable right here, if we right click it and we select watch this value, it's going to display us the current value in the variable. So by default it is 0. Now if we would press play, it's 1, you can see it's 1, 2, 3, because each time it is adding +1 whenever we click it. So that's a really cool feature that we can use. So now the next step is actually quite a boring one. Instead of clicking the X sign, which you can do alternatively is mouse wheel click. So if I click with the mouse wheel, it's going to instantly close that specific window. Now time for the grand finale. Time to show me some of the things that you can do to perhaps make your editor look nicer, or in my case, as you will notice, make it look a lot worse. So you can go to the editor preferences, and one of the things that you might be interested in is the lines for the actual execution of things or whatever. So these things right here, you can change the angles of those. By default you can see those are like rounded things, they don't have any square edges. You can change that in the editor's preferences by going to the graph editor, and then in the splines you can show the advanced and change these values right here. So if we would change all of these values to some ridiculously low number like so, and then go to the editor, you will see that these lines are very, very sharp edged. And if you like this way more, go ahead, use that. You can make them even more angled or more sharper as well. Well, not a lot because mine are at very low values, but well, basically you get the idea. Now the next thing, also back in the editor preferences, is that you can change any variables colors. So by default the execution pin is white. We can change this to be dark blue. By default the boolean color is red. You can change it to be green, and then if you go in here you will see execution is red, not red but blue. And then if we create a new boolean, it's going to be green. Obviously I strongly suggest you don't change these. If you're going to be the only one with different colored execution pins and all that stuff, others might get confused about what type of a variable this is. I'm personally very used to the default coloring that Unreal Engine uses, and if I would have to look at a code that has some different colored values, different colored variables, I would probably get very confused about that. So probably don't change those. But what you can do is go to the appearance section and change all kinds of different parameters. So for example, if we select any object, you see it has like an orange outline around it. Also, if we select any of the blueprints or folders in the content browser, or here in the world outliner or whatever, basically those things turn orange. Now we can change that color. So we have the selection, which we can change to be maybe like red. And then, for example, we have the pressed selection, which we could select maybe like blue. Now you will see that here we have these guys right here are blue, and inactive selections are, I guess those are inactive. No, those are just selections. They are basically red. So we select folders. Those are red. Now the outlines as well, you can see, are red. So that's gonna, maybe if you don't like the orange color, you can change that a bit. Also, you can change many different things like main editor background overlay. So if we change the tint to be something like pink, you will see at the top we have a pink line. We can also change the child to be like green, for example. So if we bring this down, you will see this one is green now. Maybe if you want to color code some stuff to know which is which, that will save you a lot of time. So you can see the pressed ones are blue. So if we select like the class defaults, it's going to turn blue. So basically stuff like that. Also, you can change in the graph. So by default, the graph looks like this. What you can also do is change the grid size. So maybe like 4. That didn't really change much. So let's bump it up to like 92. There we go. So now you can see that the graph is with a bigger squares basically. We can also change the colors. So now you will see what I meant by make my project a lot worse. So we bring these colors up and change them up. Now you can see my grid panel is looking a lot different. You can also apply a background image to it as well if you feel like so. Obviously, as you can see, this looks way worse, and now it's way harder to actually see the blueprints themselves. So I actually really prefer the default stuff. And yeah, obviously you can change colors basically for everything inside of here. There's so many things to change. And let's say you did the same thing I did, and your project now looks like this, and it's basically unusable because, well, you can't really even see the blueprints and the colors are totally different. What you want to do is actually navigate to your content browser. So let's say we right click any of our root folders, show in the Explorer. So now this opens up the project folder for us. Let's go to the root folder right here. And what you want to do is actually go to the saved folder. Then we have the config folder, Windows, and here we want to delete the editor per project user settings. Don't delete anything else, otherwise this will mess up with your project settings. Basically, let's say you have some input bindings for the axis, you have some collision preset traces or whatever. If you're going to delete too many of these things, it might mess with it. So just know that this thing right here is going to bring your editor back. So delete that. Preferably before you delete that thing, make sure you close your project and then delete the editors per user, and then reopen up your project, and you will see that it went back to normal. There we go. So we are back at the defaults. Everything is still functioning. All the other data got saved. It just basically reset all the changes that you made in the editor preferences. That's going to be it for today's episode. Again, quite a few tips and tricks. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something new. Hope this was useful. If you have any more tips and tricks, leave them down in the description box. I will add some more videos about this topic. I have quite a few tips in my Discord as well. So I'm going to collect a few more and probably have another video about similar topic in a week or two. So subscribe, and I see you then.